It's getting a little sensual with the mic. So, before the start of our Rage Quit episode, I would like to tell a little bit about Rage Quit's sponsor. So, welcome to another episode of Rage Quit, the husband and wife duo that discusses video games every week. Rage Quit is sponsored by AFK Clothing Co. Are you a gamer? Do you enjoy games? Then check out AFK Clothing Co. for all of your gaming apparel needs. As I record this, I am sporting an AFK green sleeve baseball tee that I absolutely love and wear every week. We'd never be sponsored by something we didn't like. And if you'd like to support the show, head on over to AFK Clothing Co., link in the description below, and type ASI in the promo code box to get 10% off your next order. As always, just follow the bear. And now on to the show.
There
it is. There it is.
That or a scream. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome you back maybe a second time around.
Not a second time around. Well, I mean, it could be, I don't know.
To Rage Quit.
It's so hard.
That's what she said.
Whoa.
Whoa, kind sir. This is a family-friendly show. I like to keep it PG. Yeah, don't burn your iPad. That'd be bullshit.
Yeah, that was it.
All right, well, welcome back to Rage Quit.
I'm Anthony Schultz.
I'm Ariel Skahulitz.
Skahulitz. The dynamic duo, which I described this as in a description for Rage Quit.
Oh my god, did you really?
I had to.
Why?
You're Robin.
Why am I Robin? That's fucked up.
You can pick whatever Robin you want.
Oh,
that's fair.
God. Dick Grayson.
Yeah, original Robin. Men in tights.
Whoa. All right. Well, what episode of Rage Quit is this?
We're on 17 now.
What? 17 episodes with Mothman.
At the beginning of the year, we had our 2019 Game of the Year discussion, as well as our 2020 predictions.
Yep.
And then we had our kind of like in-depth genre discussion, or micro-genre discussion.
Macro genre.
We down a little about macro genres as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
APSs and
kind of
RPGs
just
and
dived
stuff.
into a bunch of shit.
Yeah, that podcast really started out as
Metro.
Just gonna be Metrovania and Soulsborne, and then as we went, I kept remembering other subgenres.
That's what happens when you have a husband like him.
Yeah. This episode though is gonna be about
art style.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about cell shading.
This is where I come into play.
I should have written it down. Thank God I remembered though.
It's a process of elimination. We figured it out. That's why I always tell you, write it down. You won't remember
I
it.
know. And I've got like ASInquisitor like notebooks of the wazoo where I write like everything down, but sometimes I forget. And I don't write it down. I'm like, I'll remember.
Which notebook is it in? Shit!
And then I didn't, but I did. So it's like, which was right? I don't know.
Batman.
Could be.
Alright. No, so cell shading is basically the process of flattening out the artwork with just like bold lines.
Yeah, I mean it's also known as like toon shading.
Cartoon shading, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's very like two-dimensional.
Yeah, it's very two-dimensional.
It's usually very colorful, very bright.
Very colorful, very bright. They use
It can be at least.
like the black lines to distinct, facial features, like your lips and mouth. You don't shade it.
Yeah, it's not like
Realism.
Not saying, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the best way to put it. It's not going for like photorealistic.
It's not a person.
But it is.
Even though it is a person. So the best game, and we talked about this on many of our shows, is Borderlands, is known for cel shading.
Yeah, I think that's like the biggest modern franchise that's carried through for more than a decade now. Mm-hmm. That is.
Obviously, there's more genres, and we're definitely going to talk about them, but now you knew this when it started. What was the backlash that they got from it?
Yeah, so this I remember distinctly, like, people being very upset. So there was a really early Borderlands trailer that was photorealistic. Yeah. And it shows, I believe it's Tannis, and I think it's Tannis, but she's, like, scarred on her face, and she's, like, narrating and stuff, and, like, you don't see the scarred part of her face, and the camera kind of pans around, and she's, like, telling you about, like, Pandora, or, like, where you are, and it's just a cinematic trailer, and then it pans around, and she's standing on this cliff top on Pandora, And it was a beautiful trailer, too, especially at the time. I don't know if it holds up or not. I haven't watched it in quite a few years.
Yeah.
And then it pans around and shows the scars on her face. And it's, like, very kind of serious, like, tone to the trailer. Very kind of dark, like, post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Like, and it was photorealistic.
Mm-hmm.
They loved it. Thought it was great. Especially at the time. You're talking about, like, early PS3 360 days.
Mm-hmm.
And the graphical leap from, you know, the PS2 to the PS3
was huge.
Yeah, or the original Xbox to the Xbox 360 was big, and a lot of people were looking for just kind of graphical beauties.
Yeah, they wanted something out of, you know, square titties. Square titties.
Pretty much. I mean, it's like those early days of 3D with like PS1 and PS2. It's like there was a distinct improvement there as well, but it's definitely not realistic.
No, well, not like realism at its finest, but it's. But
we were getting closer and closer and closer, and I think the first generation that really put us, especially by the end of it, was the 360 PS3 generation, where it was like, wow, these games are absolutely gorgeous. They look like people. There's no blockiness to them. Like
there's no square titties.
Yeah, and it was interesting, but they decided to change it
for whatever reason
and make it more cel shaded.
Mm-hmm.
And I really dug the art style when they did that. I was already kind of getting tired of just us always talking about it needs to be photorealistic, even though it really hadn't happened at the time.
Like, no offense to everybody else, when I want to play a game, I don't want it to be real.
Yeah, it's like there's certain set pieces that I want to be more realistic, like The Last of Us or something, where it's like...
We are dealing with zombies and shit, so
and it's such a dark story and a dark world, and it's like... It's very serious kind of like topics of discussion on top of it. It's like as far from escapism as you can really get.
When I'm playing with a fucking looter shooter or let's say fucking Zelda of all things, I don't need Zelda to look real. I don't care. He looks like a fucking box.
Exactly, and I think Nintendo's been really good about
keeping it that way.
Yeah, kind of not necessarily like cel shading all the time, but having it be a little bit more cartoony, which I think that's probably why they get the more family friendly kind of branding.
Yeah, over exaggerated on like big eyes and anime-esque, obviously because it's Nintendo. Yeah,
and then you get your Mario and your Donkey Kong and your Zelda and things like that. Not hyper realistic.
No.
So, but yeah, when they switched over for the first Borderlands and they started kind of giving teases and like releases of this cel shaded look opposed to that first trailer they released. People threw a bitch fit about it. They were like angry about it. They thought it was like a cop out, like that it was lazy because it's easier to do cel shading. Like they're really. I don't remember there being much discussion about like an aesthetic or artistic choice.
No,
and I feel like this happens in all mediums, but in gaming we like quickly forget how people reacted when something released.
Yeah.
And then we move on and be like, no, I've always been a Borderlands fan. It's the greatest thing in the world. And it's like, I don't know if it's like an age thing or we just quickly forget.
Yeah. Which happens, unfortunately.
A lot of people are just like, we'll quickly forget whether it's like a bad game or a good game. Or like how it was received at the time.
We'll just bitch in this moment.
Yeah.
How fucking dare you?
So like leading up to it until it released, there was just a lot of like complaints and people complaining about it in general. Because it was cel shaded. Like you have no hint at like gameplay. Nobody's played it.
I feel like if you're not making the game, you can fuck off right now.
Yeah, it's just like people just kind of spun up into this.
Are you making the game? Joe Blow sitting on the couch there, eating your Cheetos, watching porn?
No, you're not.
Yeah, get mad about porn being cel-shaded, sure. But
cel-shaded porn?
Now you're thinking
that is funny, yeah. That's funny.
But that's the thing, like, where I run into a thing all the time is with art, because I am an artist. And I love... Don't get me wrong, I love the realism as well, and I just said this too, but I think cel shading is fucking gorgeous.
I think it's awesome,
and
personally.
It's so much fun. I love cel shading personally on myself. A lot of stuff I paint, I can make it as real as you want it to be, but when I'm doing something fun, like I'm painting a little Pokemon, I'm cel shading that bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You getting chunks of color and outline in the black. It's basically what that is.
Yeah. Which makes sense. And for me, like from a gaming perspective, I think games from especially kind of that early 3D generation, and then even a lot of older games where they were 3D technology or 3D models and stuff. I think the cel shaded ones hold up the best.
They do.
I think if it's a good game, and depending on the genre, it'll stand the test of time, opposed to its peers who have blocky triangle tits, and they're not going to.
It's
you know,
useless.
like I think, like Ni no Kuni is one of my favorite RPGs. I think that'll last a really long time,
It was like even
opposed to like Final Fantasy 15.
Yeah.
Like which are near contemporaries.
Like, you think about it too, even just from the beginning of the PlayStation 4 to now, how many games you can't play because of the graphics or the art.
Graphics usually I can get over, but controls in particular, because they were so clunky at the time. Like I do have difficulties with going back and playing certain.
Well, that's
ones.
a different thing too. We're talking
Usually
about.
like RPGs I can get into and get my head over the graphical style of it, but if trying to play like a shooter, even if it was a cell shaded shooter from like PS1 days, would be a little difficult.
True. Well, that's a different topic.
But there is a good shooter, 13, that's cell shaded, that I think holds up a lot better than other shooters of that time. And I think it's because it's cell shaded, to be honest. Like the artwork still pops for you, it still draws you in. It's got that kind of comic book allure to it. And then the mechanics are decent enough that you can keep going.
It's like people are so happy with comic books and stuff, and that's basically what it was, cell shading, and people are like just bitching it because
cartoons and comic books. Really.
Cartoons and comic books.
It harkens back to that feeling when you were a kid, for sure.
And I like that feeling. I like that feeling where you're like, oh my god, this reminds me of cartoons and comics and stuff.
Yeah, whatever cartoons you were into.
You can still get the realism out of too, because then we were talking about like Tall Tales.
Yeah,
Walking Dead, Tall Tales.
Yeah, Telltale's done a
still so fucking dramatic.
Yeah, and like even recently with them kind of reforming like proxy wise, they just recently released a patch. I think it was for the last Telltale Batman game, where it's like it's still cell shaded, of course, but it's like a noir like style.
Yeah, where they
like
changed it.
Black and white and grays, and it's like to emphasize kind of that nitty gritty kind of Batman detective, comic book like.
Yeah.
Hook.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool idea. I think that's really clever, and I think those games, maybe mechanically, unfortunately, unless they're redone, will struggle a little bit just because of the engine that they were based on. But as far as the art style itself and the storytelling, I think will last a lot longer than other adventure games that weren't.
Well, it's like if you think about it too, with the cell shading, with people that did that, it's lazy, it's this, it's that. But it's like you watch The Walking Dead Tall Tales and how it's cell shaded, and I still get a dramatic fucking feeling from that game compared to like it being like in The Last of Us, which is a gorgeous game.
Yeah, they can definitely like still. You can still have like attachment, and it can spark emotion and like or gut reaction depending on the writing and like the decision making, like in those games. And I think people like start to forget that a little bit. They focus on the power of the machine or like the photorealism,
which you've done too. Like even in this conversation a couple times, or like you're talking about like I like the game, but the gameplay because it's clunky is what messes it up.
That it's not because of like the engine running it or even the platform it's on. It's just because of that's more design.
Yeah.
And the back end for controls, like button mapping, or like if it only had one analog stick or no analog sticks, that makes certain genres hard to play. That's why, like, when I go back and I play older games, RPGs are easy.
Yeah, true.
You don't need a lot of buttons. A lot of like choices or how you build a character is usually kind of squirreled away into like inventory management or like skill building. They're in menu systems.
Yeah.
And those menu systems like hold up, so that's like a good design kind of thing. There's menus now where it's like the Outer Worlds, it lags like crazy.
Yeah.
Everyone says it's a really good way to like do a menu system and stuff, but I was like, I find it just as bad as a lot of the other menu systems I've dealt with, especially in this generation where it's like, why does I click a button and go into a menu and there's like distinct 5-second lag before I can get to a menu, or I press a button and it doesn't go to the next tab. I have to like wait or press it again because I don't know if it's gonna work or not.
Then I'm too far. Yeah,
that's weird. That's kind of what I mean about like gameplay mechanics and stuff. I don't think that's aged because of necessarily the hardware or even how it looks, like whether it's cell shaded or not, but the genre and the controller of the time.
True.
That affects that for me.
Well, then, shit, let's wrap all that up in one then. Let's talk about cheatiness, art, and all of it in this podcast.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Make it a long one.
Yep, I'm down with that.
Well, then, let's bitch about consoles. Let's talk about them bastards in the West. Which is a bad knocking on my point since consoles are very important. But,
yeah.
I feel like for me, there's obviously a bunch of consoles out that are horrible. What the fuck's up with the Wii U, yo?
Who knows?
Such
Poor branding. I mean, John and I have talked about that. Like our co-host for FGG.
Yeah.
He'll come over and stuff. Sometimes we'll do a podcast. Sometimes we won't. But we always discuss games.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's usually like main focus of conversation.
Oh, you do ever talk about it? That's why I go take a nap.
I know, yeah. And we've talked about like the Wii U extensively, and I think he kind of hits the nail on the head there because it's just horrible branding. It's just confusing. Like you don't know what it is. Like is the tablet the console? Is it the same? Is it an attachment to the Wii? Is it something more? Is it a separate console? Especially when you get into older generations, like parents buying stuff for kids or grandparents, buying stuff for their children or grandchildren. Oh, yeah. Like, oh, you already have a Wii. Like,
and then they're like, wait, no, but it's different. But okay,
how? The Wii U is like, oh, do I just need a tablet? Like, are there different games on it, or to kind of play the same games on it? Like, and it's just there wasn't really a clarity in branding.
So, do you think that makes it a bad console?
Yeah, because I think in that instance, the Switch is what the Wii U wanted to be.
True.
I think either technology or Nintendo's like R&D just hadn't gotten that far yet.
Well, yeah.
And it was time for a new console. The Wii had not necessarily overstayed its welcome. It was incredibly popular and did well. We still have one hooked up, but I think it was just time for the next one.
I use it all the time.
So they put out the Wii U, and they thought that it was going to be functional enough to satisfy this kind of like hybrid market that now exists because of the Switch.
Yeah.
And it just didn't realize its own dreams, its own
dreams.
Yeah.
And it's true though, because like it's hard to figure out, you get gorgeous games, you get the cel shading, which people bitch about artistic style and stuff, and then you get come along the lines of where just like branding names as well, Wii and then Wii U, it's like
it just should have been. I think it would have had an easier time. I don't necessarily think it would have like rocked the world like the Wii did or like the Switch has. But if they had, it was obviously a blessing in disguise because we got the Switch out of it. The witch, yeah, you out of it. We got the Switch out of it, which is a fantastic console, probably one of the best, and. So it like led to that. So it's like you can't kind of deny the cause and effect.
No, but
if it had been like branded, probably just better overall like marketing, like commercials or even like traditional print ad and a different name. Especially
it should have been a different name.
If it had been like the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo Switch and things like that. If it had just been like some clever play on the word like tablet or something or because it's like. The Wii obviously was more geared towards like people playing
Mobius or something like that.
Yeah, Nintendo Mobius, or whatever. I mean, they always kind of do weird names to begin with, so it's hard to like pick and choose what they would actually decide on.
It's Nintendo,
but it just shouldn't have had anything to do with the Wii, or even if the Switch was already in development. If you think about it,
a lot of their consoles with Nintendo especially don't follow names.
No, and I think that's good. I think you need to go one way or the other. I think Xbox really is the only one that's kind of fucked that up.
Yeah, Xbox. What the fuck you doing, Xbox?
Yeah, because it's like
down, dude.
Everyone's like, well, you know what you're gonna get. It's boring with PlayStation, and it's like, yeah, but you know what you're gonna get. Like, it's safe for sure.
Oh my god, did you see how everyone like freaked the hell out of the PS5 logo being released?
Because it's just the same as the PS4, except with the 5
and the PS2.
Yeah, and it's like they're all the same. Like, who? I don't care about that. Like. But it's very distinctly.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
5th PlayStation, and there was the 4th PlayStation, there was the 3rd one. It makes it easy. And then in between, they obviously do, like, in PlayStation's case, like a PlayStation 4 Slim or Super Slim or, whatever, Pro.
Yeah, Pro or whatever.
I get that. Put a little subtitle on it, but it's still a PS4.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting. Like, just because you're redressing a gal doesn't mean that there's not a different gal. Xbox though doesn't know what it is like half the time. Like it's like you get the Xbox, which a lot of people call the Xbox One because it was the first one or the original one.
Well, you can't do it because there is an Xbox One.
Yeah, and then they did the 360. I was fine with that between one to the other. 360, cool. Yeah. Very popular console. I feel like they should have expanded off the Xbox 90, the Xbox 45 degree, the Xbox. I heard, and I never thought of this, and I don't know if this would be just like a like me in the minority, and like a lot of other people would have thought of this if it was advertised this way. But they're like, people didn't want to do like, like the Xbox like 720 or something like that because they went all the way around again. So there's like back at square one. I was like, I never even would have thought of that. I would just been like, oh, that makes sense. Like 360, 720, like 1080 or whatever. Then they didn't want to get to 1080 because then they get confused with like people get confused with resolution.
I think they just confuse themselves regardless.
Yeah, and I was like, I think we're going down the rabbit hole a little too much here. Like
Xbox, pull back. Come on.
Yeah, I feel like they could have kept with that, and it would have been interesting.
Well, they could even done an Xbox One, Xbox 2.
I mean,
Xbox
eventually...
Xbox 4, Xbox 5.
It would get a little wonky, because then you'd be like, whatever degree measurement you would use would be like the Xbox 2408 or something like that, and that would get weird. I get that. But I feel like they could have written that a little while.
Yeah.
But yeah, to go to the Xbox One after the 360, when there's already an Xbox One, and then now it's like, what, the Xbox Series X?
Yes.
And the X is probably just like a variable and will be a name, and they'll have a whole bunch in that series.
Yep.
So it's like, so we don't really know what the name of the console is.
I'm going to laugh. It's going to be Xbox Series X1.
Yeah.
For their Pro or whatever.
That would be really funny, because then it's like, now you're mixing so many things together.
Now you're just fucking
Some people just say now, like, the OG Xbox.
Oh
like,
my god.
Yeah, that's like,
you make my brain hurt. Alright, back to talking about, well, all the names are just shitty. But,
well, like I said, we're talking about...
consoles and remotes and stuff.
Yeah, and the shittiness of them.
This is where you lambast the Switch.
What about... Oh, with the Joy-Cons
Yep.
and stuff? Yeah, so controllers definitely like a big thing. Like, I kind of complained about that
monkey paws.
when we were talking about cell shading and how that bled over into different genres of like different ages.
Yeah.
And like if the controllers are crap, I have a hard time playing that. When the controls are like rough. Yeah, the Switch definitely. Like the Joy-Cons like just don't work for me. I can't do it. Like,
why?
Well, it's just... I don't know. It's like the button mapping's not too far off from, and then it has all the same amount of buttons too as like an Xbox controller or a PlayStation controller. But it's like it's just too small. Like it wants to be a handheld, but it's not small enough to do that. Like a Vita or a PSP, which I have like no issues with. As a side note, though, the Vita not having 2 sets of triggers in the back is annoying, and the PSP only had 1 analog stick. That was super annoying. I had trouble playing some games. And again, some genres didn't work on those handhelds, like first-person shooters without 2 analog sticks. Yeah, no, it's not going to happen. But having a Pro controller that you gifted me for Christmas, like, is fantastic. I can play it like any other game now.
Yeah.
The Nintendo Switch. And so it's great, because it's like... It's got the inverted analog sticks like a Xbox, which I'm not terribly used to, but I have played an Xbox, and that's a very common controller type. Sony's really the only one that doesn't do that. And so it fits in your hand better, like the functionality is better, it's got programmable buttons. Yeah, it's great. Like I enjoy playing it that way. I think the Switch is just too big for the Joy-Cons, and then it makes it difficult to play with multiple people.
Yeah, well, we found it too, which kind of pissed me off, because you could play the Joy-Cons on, let's say, Diablo.
Yeah, you could each have a Joy-Con and play Diablo 3
But you can't do it
fine.
with Minecraft.
Minecraft, no. You have to either have 2 sets of Joy-Cons or another controller and your
Joy-Con.
set of Joy-Cons.
What the fuck's up with that shit?
It's really weird, because Diablo is a very, like, complex RPG, action RPG.
But we can play with itty-bitty little
But
controllers.
Minecraft, you can't.
So Minecraft's like, nah, bitch, you gotta get another controller. You ain't playing me.
Yeah, it is really bizarre. Yeah, controllers, and I've actually been thinking about it a lot more since you got me that controller for the Switch.
Because you didn't realize it, though.
I didn't really think about it so much. I remember, like, my PSP and Vita kind of argument.
Well, yeah, it
like,
makes
talking
sense.
about that,
Because they're legitimately missing parts.
Yeah, and it's like, but they're smaller on handhelds and on the go anyways. And I was like more fine with it. But I like to play my Switch on the TV in the living room.
Yeah. Like, you'll play handheld when I take the TV over to play on the Wii.
Yeah, and I did that just the other day where I was like I've been using the controller for the past 3 weeks and tried to use the Joy-Cons and play the Switch in handheld mode, and I was like, my head for whatever reason could not. I play all sorts of different games throughout the week for streaming purposes and then like on my own. just for content creation. And I can... my mind will easily jockey back and forth between all these different control setups. Between all these different games.
Mapping and setting up. And...
Going from Yeast 8 on the Switch with the Pro Controller to Yeast 8 with the Joy-Cons in handheld mode, like, broke my brain. I could not remember what buttons did what and how they functioned.
Brain!
Even though it has the buttons in the same spot and the same amount of buttons. I was like, I don't remember anymore. I just forgot. I was just like, nope. Brain's like, peace.
Please, I'm out of here,
So I struggled to, play...
That's hilarious.
Just for a little bit on the Switch in handheld mode, but switching back to the Pro Controller, I was like, this is how it's meant to be played. This is
also plays into another factor too. Does the Xbox controller still take batteries?
I think it does. It might have recharging batteries now. The thing though is that Xbox does have better controls overall compared to Sony.
Well, it's because you play
and
with
they have
the Switch though, because of the back.
Well, and they've always had Pro controllers and stuff, and they're they're designed with ergonomics in mind. They have been for a long time. They're comfortable. The battery pack thing is weird. I'll give you that. They should just have automatically recharging batteries like Sony does.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't. But yeah, the form factor is great on it. The button layout is almost identical to... It is identical to the Switch Pro controller, and it's nearly identical to the Sony, DualShocks. But, yeah, I think this is where Xbox takes the cake in my head for consoles, is their controller in particular. They have a better controller out of anybody.
Just because I think about, obviously, the comfort ability and the playability as well.
Yeah, and they have the, 4 programmable buttons on the back, the Switch has the 2 at least. Sony's never really done that.
No,
they have an add-on coming out now for the PS4 controller where you can do that.
That's gonna be weird.
Which is weird. Yeah, it's like $30. But they instead of releasing a Pro controller...
But you just reach up a control.
And I don't think they want to because it's the end of a generation, and the PS5 is going to have those already built in. So they're like, we want to bridge the gap between the PS4 and the PS5 controller without releasing a Pro controller.
Well, that makes sense too then, because where the hell are they going to make their money if you release it and they can play on both systems?
Yeah, true. And you just might as well have either... They should have just put out a Pro controller years ago now by this point.
Yeah, but...
And they just didn't, and then...
I think they're just sticking it to the man, which is us.
Kind of, yeah, a little bit.
They're like, we're not going to follow...
I am interested in the back 2 thing, because of the Switch one, though.
Whoa, calm down now. Mothman, no!
Mothman, no.
But it's just crazy to see so many generations of consoles. And now let's talk about the really shitty old ones.
Yeah, so... We talked about the Wii U, which I think that's most recent memory for sure.
Tangential.
Yeah, then we started talking about controllers and stuff.
We fucked up. Anyways, back on back.
Sega Dreamcast definitely bombed hard. They pulled that super early. Yeah, I'm a big Sega guy, so I'm very happy to have a Sega Dreamcast. There's a lot of good games on there. Not a ton, I would say, because they just weren't around long enough to have a ton of great games on it. Sega Dreamcast in particular is a good console.
The controller's so weird.
The controller's bizarre, yeah, because it has the memory pack built into it.
Yeah.
And you can pull it in and out, and it has its own little screen on it, which is weird.
Can you connect that one to the interwebs?
Yes, Dreamcast you can play online. There's still Quake servers, private Quake servers, and people play Quake on Dreamcast. I don't know if it's a private server. They're privately funded and hosted too.
That's what I mean. That's insane.
Yeah, somebody's paying a server fee, every month, so they can keep playing Quake.
On the Dreamcast.
Yeah, on the Sega Dreamcast from 20 years ago, which is crazy. That controller is weird.
It's so weird.
The
other one, I like the 64 system, but the controllers...
I hate that controller.
I know you hate it. I love it.
I see it, and I didn't grow up with one, though. I played GoldenEye 6... is it GoldenEye 64?
Yeah.
Yeah. On...
the other system.
No, I played it on the 64. I had a friend of mine when I was in junior high who had a N64, and we'd hang out and stuff. We'd have a group of us. Yeah. There was at least usually 4. Sometimes it was just him and I. But anyways, That's what we did. We played GoldenEye all night. So it's like I do have experience
always
with
cheating
that.
and get the golden gun and shooting through the goddamn window. You bitch! You can't shoot through the window! Quit cheating!
Yeah, I played like later Bond games on like the PS2.
Yeah.
That I really
But
enjoyed.
I actually like that. And which why it
That
makes
controller is so
I love
weird.
that controller. And it makes it easier for me to play the Switch controllers.
Oh yeah,
They
that
got
makes
little
sense.
hands though too.
Yeah, for me it's just like button layout, even on the same amount of buttons, and the size. It's a little too small for me. For like a plain
aspect.
You know, on a big screen. Like a home console. It's just difficult for me to like get into. But yeah, the Sega Dreamcast, I think way too ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Especially with like internet
like,
connectivity and stuff in 2000. And
you had dial-up back then that day, yo.
Yeah, exactly. And like playing games online really just wasn't a thing yet. I mean, it just wasn't. And then on top of it,
could you imagine if they released Dreamcast today? Obviously revamped it for people, but
like a very like a super modern console, but like a Sega Dreamcast 2 or something. Yeah, that would be cool. That would be rad. I'd totally be down with that. Yeah, if it was like on par with even just the PS4 and the Xbox One, but
that's
Sega,
what I mean. Sega.
That'd be so trippy.
Come back, Sega. We miss you.
Yeah, I don't have enough money to even do that now. No way. But they screwed over consumers because it was like they came out like back to back to back with consoles. They tried to get the Genesis to last forever with these add-ons, and then it was like, I mean, you got to think. So you get Sega Genesis, which was already kind of underpowered, but on par with like Super Nintendo. And then Nintendo after that went to Nintendo 64. Yeah. Sega, and then the GameCube. Yep. We'll draw it out to that. When the 64 came out, you get the PS1, and then the GameCube, PS2. Yep. So those kind of all line up. Sega went from like Genesis, and then Saturn, to Dreamcast. Yeah. So it's like Saturn, but the Saturn came out way too late because they were adding on all this like weird shit to the Genesis to make it last longer and longer and longer. And then they like pushed out a console and it didn't do too well because it was PS1 and 64.
Yeah, the heights of the
and then it was
Nintendo
like
and Sony's
Dreamcast. You know,
when did Microsoft come out?
Their generation was like PS2, so it was PS2, GameCube.
That's so weird that they have
and Xbox.
If you think
that's where Xbox started, but it was the second iteration for the PlayStation, and then
wasn't Microsoft mainly on PC for the longest time?
There's a software company like that's where they really that's their bread and butter is software, not hardware per se.
No, but it's just so weird that not for granted that they came out with hardware because Sony was just fucking TVs.
Fair enough.
It's just weird to think that they were literally in their second generation. They're like, hey, maybe we should get on this bandwagon. And then here comes the Xbox.
Sony did the same thing. I mean, you gotta think. Because the TurboGrafx 64 released in there, the Atari Jaguar. Like, there's weird fucking consoles in the 90s. Like, you had a lot of people...
We don't talk about that.
We had a lot of people, like, or companies, like, competing for the same space. And... I mean, Sega came out against Nintendo as, like, the cool kid in the block. That's why we have Sonic and shit like that. They want to be the cool gamers. Like,
now we want
Sega.
Sonic.
Yeah, pretty
Except
much.
for Baby Sonic.
Yeah. Pretty much. Yeah. That's what it boils down to. Yeah. But then PS1 came out and was, like, obviously a direct competitor to the 64 and ended up doing better than the 64 just because they had discs instead of cartridges. And Nintendo didn't want to stray away from cartridges at the time.
But then they did the GameCube, and then they had their mini discs.
They had their mini disc, yeah. But then the PS2 was the first...
Wanted to play Blu-ray DVDs, isn't it?
Not Blu-rays, but DVDs.
DVDs.
It was a cheap DVD player.
Yeah.
So a lot of people buy...
just think of the phrase you just said.
Cheap DVD player? Yeah.
The PlayStation.
Because it was the PlayStation 2.
It was a cheap DVD player. Just let that wrap in your brain
because now you could, like... go find one in your dumpster, but
yeah, seriously. I'm just saying though, it's like, and then if you think about the Nintendo still does, they did the little disc on the GameCube GameCube.
Yeah, they were like the mini discs, like you said.
Mini discs, just kind of a fuck you, look, we did discs, and then they went back to cartridges.
No, they did discs for the Wii. The Wii has discs, because that would have been after GameCube.
The Switch went.
I don't know what the Wii U had, but now the Switch has cartridges.
Again.
And there was a lot of companies talking about going back to cartridges.
That's so cool to think, though. I forgot the Wii U.
Because they're solid state, they don't move, they can hold a lot of data nowadays. Like
they're not breaking parts, and what the Nintendo were saying, this is what's going to be it.
But it was the opposite problem then. So all the other companies switched over to like disc-based formats because you could hold a lot more. At the time, you couldn't on cartridges.
That's what I'm saying. They're saying that it's gonna eventually be equal.
Yeah, but are you gonna ride it out for 20 years and not produce what people
Nintendo's
want?
Nintendo's gonna do what Nintendo wants to do. But...
Yeah, and they did. And the 64 is insanely popular.
And then they're like a big ol' fuck you. We're back to cartridges again.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like Sony went down the same path with their handhelds. Mm-hmm. So with the PSP, they...
What the fuck is this little thing? You can't open it. I didn't know
I thought they did. The very first PSP game I almost destroyed the case because I thought you pulled out that mini disc. I thought it was a case for the mini disc.
Because like the GameCube has the mini disc.
And and it's like, oh no, you keep it in that little white case and you pop it in. And they called it was a UMD, a Universal Media Disc. And they thought it was going to like catch on like wildfire.
Nope.
Yeah, no. And then the Vita has cartridges.
You know how many people freaking destroyed those fucking discs trying to open them thinking...
At first, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. You know for sure.
I almost did. And I was like, this is not coming apart. I don't think you're supposed to do this. And then I think I just tried it out and like popped the whole thing in. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank God I didn't ruin that.
Yeah. And then people could, break it, hack the PSP, get unlimited games.
Oh, yeah, that was the big thing with the PSP. That's why it was so popular and sold so well, is because you could easily, you can homebrew like crazy on it. Mm-hmm. Same with the Wii. You could homebrew, so it's like you could emulate almost any game that you wanted.
Yeah,
and just play whatever you wanted. That's why people have Raspberry Pis nowadays. But
what the fuck is Raspberry? Oh my god.
It's the genre discussion all over again.
It is. What's with the names?
Sony's kind of downfall, though, was definitely like they dived too heavily into proprietary tech. Yes. So
and
it's
the
like
PS3 came out.
Yeah, which is like first like commercially available Blu-ray player because they are indeed that. Yeah. It's like Blu-rays wouldn't exist without Sony. Period. Or would have been far off. Mm-hmm. Xbox had UHD DVDs, or what was it? Ultra high def DVDs? I think that's what it was.
Yeah, UHD.
And they had a whole separate format and stuff. And eventually Xbox had to relent because they were losing money on it because people may not have been buying it because the PS3 had a rocky start, but also released a year after the 360.
It was super expensive.
They eventually had to go to Blu-rays. The Xbox One plays Blu-rays, so you know that there's a backdoor deal there where they have to pay Sony money to use that technology. Because that's proprietary, and because they invented it and patented by Sony, which is funny.
Which is hilarious if you think about Xbox, the backdoor paying money.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and then by the end of that console generation, the PS3 had outsold the 360, which nobody expected.
No, because it took such a rough start because it was too high tech at the time.
It was too expensive too. It was $700 for a fucking console. Yeah. It was ridiculous for a PS3. 360 was normal, $400 or $500 or whatever.
Yeah, it was ridiculously expensive. And then they came out with the Slim, which kind of counteracted that. We dropped it in price.
And that the PS3 would probably be Sony's biggest failure console-wise. Besides other kind of weird proprietary stuff for their handhelds.
Well, that's more the Asian thing going on there.
Yeah. The PS3 was notoriously difficult to code for. Yeah. And so game developers had a hard time.
Well, if you think about it too, another thing, Nintendo's always been more known for their handheld games. And
they dominated the handheld market for sure.
And always have dominated the handheld market, with the DS, the Game Boy. I remember my first Game Boy Color.
Yeah, and I had a Game Boy Color because there was no other handhelds. If you
Boy.
wanted to play handheld games, you
played
had
Game
Nintendo.
Boy. Yeah, you had Nintendo.
I had the turquoise Game Boy Color.
Mine was green. So that's why the Switch is such innovative. This is what we talked about the Wii U wanted to be, and
they just weren't there tech wise, or they just bungled marketing so hard that
it's kind of flopped. But then you get the Switch Lights, which are hilarious. They're basically their new Nintendo DS.
No, yeah, pretty much. they kind of cornered themselves out of the handheld market by doing a hybrid console.
Yep.
And I think Alienware, I just read an article the other day, is doing like their own version of the Switch. That's like PC based. Same kind of setup. It's like a hybrid where you can use it as like a traditional PC almost gaming wise by hooking up to like a TV or a monitor. But you can have it on the go as well.
A fucking goddamn thing with PC bitches. We're talking about the PC flopped. What's the one that flopped?
The Steam box.
Yeah,
where it's
like someone bought a Steam box controller or whatever.
Yeah, I thought that was really weird. They bought a Steam controller, and Steam is huge and super influential in like PC gaming spheres. But it was, I thought that was bizarre that now they bought a Steam box controller, and then I remember they didn't like really double down into the console market by just putting out a like singular machine at the time. And then making it iterative like Xbox, Nintendo, and Sony have done.
Yeah.
And there was like, oh, you can choose like 12 of these. They were pretty much just prefab PCs you could buy. So I was like, well, why would I do that when I can just build my own PC? That would be way more powerful. And only be a couple $100 more. Like, what's the point? And why would I use that controller? If I build my own PC, I can use any controller pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make sense. It's like, I can use my PS4 controller with my iPad now. Like, there's no point in buying.
That is so weird when you play it like that, though.
It is weird with the remote play.
Yep. It's cool to see, but it's weird. And it's funny to see just like the huge advances and obviously the ones, the ones we shall remember that have just died out because either to be too advanced.
Yeah, like Sega had screwed over consumers for a long period of time, and then you get the too advanced Dreamcast. Wii U didn't know what it wanted to be, and it was mixed marketing.
And then you get the ones that are like, what the fuck is this shit?
Yeah,
like
and then you have the Ouya, which is a prime example, which that's finally like dead and gone, thank God.
Right, finally.
That had a kind of an interesting premise too, because it was a Android-based like micro console.
Yeah.
Built more for like on PC kind of architecture, like Android, and was gonna be for like smaller games or like indie games. Yeah. I feel like the only thing we got from that was Towerfall. Towerfall Ascension probably breaks my. It doesn't. Like maybe it actually does. Top 10 list for like last 10 years of games. Because I play so much Towerfall Ascension with everyone. So.
You do. That's like the one.
That's the only like great thing that
when
came
you
from
game,
yeah.
you come over. You play some Towerfall.
Yeah, let's drink and play Towerfall.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and everyone loves Towerfall, so
right?
it's like
it's perfect. Everyone's good at Towerfall, which is funny. But then if you think about it, like, which brings us full circle back to like the artwork too, where a lot of gamers have the specific art styles and the cell shading and bitch about it. But then you get the consoles and you bitch about it and what works and what doesn't work, if it's pretty, if it's ugly. And it all ties into it, too, because, when people are bitching about the PS5 logo, it's just PlayStation 5. It's a fucking PlayStation 5. I don't know what to tell you.
Exactly. Some other kind of big flops, though, so you get the TurboGrafx 16.
What the fuck is that?
This is kind of a niche console, too, but I do remember it. I know people who have played it and had it growing up. So it released in 1989 and it was simply just called the TurboGrafx.
I wasn't alive then, so that makes sense.
16-bit. It was the first actually 16-bit console released.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of interesting. It was ridiculously expensive.
Oh, and probably back in the 80s.
They had quite a few different models and stuff for it. Let's see if it has price point here.
If it's expensive in the 80s, it's going to be fucking expensive.
Oh, yeah. I'll just do a cursory search. There's very few people who played that. The TurboGrafx was just a weird one. It was notoriously expensive, and it was kind of early to the game for 16-bit consoles. But it has kind of a unique place in gaming history. Yeah, so at the time, I don't know how much this would be now, but it was $400.
Holy shit, in the 80s, that's expensive.
Yeah. So, how much... that's we'll just do NES, actually.
What?
NES price point. $179.99 for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
No, look at the Super Nintendo, so we have kind of either side of the TurboGrafx.
Jesus Christ, that's a lot of money back in the 80s.
$400, yeah. That's the $700 PS3 right there.
Yeah, pretty much $400.
And then $199
that's not
for
bad.
the Super Nintendo.
No, that's not bad.
That's closer.
That makes sense because I bought
so like half the price for a Super Nintendo.
And
then TurboGrafx, which was $400.
And everyone already knows. In 1989. And everyone already knows Nintendo and shit like that. And
exactly, they already have a pedigree. Like what you're gonna get out of it, what characters, you're gonna get Mario, you're gonna get Zelda, especially with the Super Nintendo. The other kind of big one that I can think of was the Atari Jaguar,
which we talked about briefly.
Yeah, most people know Atari for the 2600, of course, because it was like back in the day. It wasn't the first, but you had like the Commodore 64, and you had the Atari 2600, and like you played Pong on your Atari, And it had the wonderful wood paneling on it.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
It's so great. I loved it. Supposedly they're working on like a niche, like high-end version of like Atari that's going to look like that, but be modern like components. Like a boutique item, kind of.
Yeah.
And that released in 1993.
Oh, I have two.
So, and it directly competed with the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis.
Oh, God,
and no one remembers like the Atari Jaguar.
It's SOL. It was shit of luck.
But yeah, that's another one where it was just, it didn't quite make it. It didn't just like catch it.
Do you ever feel like some of these like poor consoles, if they would have caught on, would have been just like lit? Like if like, let's say the Dreamcast would have like caught on.
Yeah, I mean if the story had gone a little differently, where it was like Sega had just kind of
actually
done what Nintendo was doing, like
even PlayStation was doing.
Yeah, even PlayStation starting up at that time, in the mid 90s. If they hadn't like been so attached to the Genesis and then maybe done like the Sega Saturn and then like competed hardware wise and like marketing, and they brought like kind of a new age of Sonic with that and like started expanding and stuff, and then you got the Dreamcast to a point where it could directly compete with the PS2 and the GameCube. Yeah, I think it would have been a game changer. I think they'd still be in the business, and I think it was like it was ahead of its time, and there's a lot of like good games that came from it.
Yeah,
like Shenmue 4 just came out after all these years, and that started on the Dreamcast.
Yeah, which is crazy to think that it started on the Dreamcast and it's coming to the PlayStation now.
Yeah, and that released like in last November, and they're talking about doing more, and there was a lot of people who were very excited about it, and it's like after all these years, a franchise that started, there was like quite a few fighting games that started on the Dreamcast that did really well. Obviously, there's still Quake servers going live.
It fucking blows my mind, yo. So I know we've kind of veered off, and our initial topic was starting off with cell shading and artwork, people bitching about that.
We kind of had like a plan though. We wanted to talk about maybe a very specific like art style, and then get into gameplay mechanics or like kind of the weirdness of that depending on the generation, and then kind of like widen out to console flops or favorites or ones that have been forgotten about in the annals of time, and then kind of like shore it all up and wrap it up with how we began, and maybe talk about camera angles and stuff, and like the programming side to that, or like lighting, or again gameplay mechanics and level design, but on a more smaller scale for these consoles.
Yeah, and I think a lot of consoles, the tough part is obviously with camera angle and stuff, and where you get stuck because you're not moving the camera. So I know you and I've talked about this before. With me, I don't mind controlling where I look. But not necessarily.
But not both. Not camera and movement.
In movement. Yeah. Because that makes me queasy.
You'd rather have like a fixed camera it would be a fixed camera that like just moves.
Moves, yeah, where I can look down pretty much
like almost like not this far, but like I've been playing Devil May Cry 2 on the Switch.
Yeah.
I don't control the camera on that. No. It does the sweeping vistas on its own.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Dante gets really small depending on how far away
we're going.
But I'm not controlling really moment to moment camera angles.
And it's like I can play like again coming back to Zelda. It's like I don't control too much of the camera. I look in certain places and can move it, especially if I'm like scrolling on a wall. Okay, I need to adjust the camera a little bit, but it's very fixed camera motion. Yeah. It's not where I'm playing where we play
like limited movement.
Call of Duty, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm angles and cameras. I'm at the ground. I'm shooting to the left. What happened?
Well, and I think with I think that's why some people just don't like shooters, like in general, is because
you have to do both.
You have to be very quick, reaction time wise, especially if you're playing online,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to be accurate in the sense of not just drawing a bead on the, another moving, living character or person that's being controlled by somebody else, but you have to make sure that your movement corresponds with that, as well as the camera angle, all at once, which can be daunting. Which I think for like a lot older generations, it's difficult to play those kind of games.
Yeah, and that's what makes it difficult for me too. It's like
knowing that you're pretty much like ostensibly in that way are controlling two characters at the same time. One is an omniscient being that's observing everything, the camera, and the another is what you're playing as, and your brain has to separate those two and control both simultaneously.
My brain don't work that way.
Yeah, it is difficult. For me, first-person shooters actually used to be my favorite genre, and I loved like Medal of Honor. I played really old Tom Clancy games.
Yeah.
Like Rainbow Six was a big one. There was like Rainbow Six Lone Wolf and stuff on the PS1. And yeah, it's like I strayed more and more away from that, but it was, I have a hard time playing those now. Like I will get motion sickness. But that's like the graphics combined with those two motions.
So do you think like...
And it was really early. So at the time it looked gorgeous and great, and it was like your mind had an easier time wrapping around it.
Yeah.
Going from something that's like super super realistic to that is difficult, even though it's like relatively the same controls. Like they're a little more fine-tuned now, but...
Well, you think too is obviously things have graduated and gotten better. What games do you feel like art style and control wise will always just be an amazing game to play?
So I kind of touched base on it a little bit. I think RPG mechanics wise holds up just in general very well. So if it's a really good RPG, if you start looking back at the Final Fantasy series or I've even played some like more obtuse ones like recently, especially with the Switch, but like Breath of Fire.
Yeah.
Like I started, that was an RPG series I never got into. It's really old. It's, kind of top-down 16-bit style. It's still playable. Yeah. It's on the, like, online, like the Super Nintendo online store or whatever for the Switch. And they even have other RPGs on the NES side of it. But I could just dive into it. Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm fine. If I tried to play, like, which I never played that game before, it was just like, oh, okay, I get this. Like, I understand, like, what's going on. And I could play it. I wasn't getting sick or anything. I wasn't getting frustrated. Like, I don't know where to go or what I'm doing. Like, I could do it. If I threw in, like, Medal of Honor now on the PS1, which I played a ton of and loved absolutely, I played it through and through, I'd have trouble playing it. Yeah. It's just the mechanics just wouldn't hold up. So I think RPGs, just as a genre, hold up best over time.
True. I think for me, again, this is going to come to my Nintendo aspects, like Zelda. I can always fucking play Zelda.
It was RPG.
Really. An RPG and stuff. And just mechanics, the fact that I can somewhat control the camera, but not really. It's just more to move it so I can look up or, down or whatever.
I think that's why I like Super Mario World so much, is because that's like the earliest platformer I can think of that like holds up. Like the mechanics are still really good. Like it looks pretty, because that is cel shaded too.
Exactly.
And it was just kind of like rare to have a game like that would last for so long. But it's like I play Super Mario World probably once a year, like, and I just really enjoy that one. I think it's awesome, and it like I can play just fine. I'm not getting sick. The artwork looks really cool still after so long, and then mechanics wise, it just holds up. Yeah. Art style wise, I think to bring it full circle, like cel shading just works. Like it makes it last a lot longer. So I think like games like
because they're not trying to have an render out titties.
Yeah, and I think
you get nice titties. Have you seen Mad Moxie?
Oh yeah. I just did a quest for Mad Moxie. I was like, oh my god, Moxie, Jesus, kiss galore,
Moxie. But I'm just saying, you get nice titties.
But that cel shading along with like sprites and like 16-bit, 8-bit stuff, especially like in RPGs, like playing Breath of the Wild, like I found that pretty. Yep. Or not Breath of the Wild. Breath of Fire is what I meant to say. So Breath of Fire holds up really well. And like the really old Final Fantasy games, which are, the sprite based and stuff. That artwork holds up. Like you get into I really like the stories, and they're some of my favorites, like Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9.
It's a little janky.
Oh, that's
Oh, God.
Again. But the mechanics, because it's an RPG, hold up. But aesthetically, they're a little rough.
It's
like,
a little rough.
The parts that I find the prettiest in that game are like the hand-drawn painted backgrounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but the 3D sprites themselves and anything that's like animated, kind of a thing that's 3D rendered, they're really rough. Like, I mean, you can count the polygons. Like,
one polygon.
but if you play Final Fantasy 6 and then prior, it's all the sprite 16-bit kind of.
And then when you're actually after you're talking or you're in a cutscene, they're the big people.
Yeah, it'll be more, again, animated and stuff, which is closer to like cell shading.
But it's cell shading. It's like a cartoon. It's like a comic. It's what
and it just lasts.
It lasts.
Like, you can go read, a Green Lantern comic book from the 80s. Like, you can go all the way back and read, like, this is a better example, Wolverine when he first started.
Yep, exactly.
He premiered in the Incredible Hulk at the very end of the 70s and had his 4-part in the early 80s. You can read that just fine.
Yep.
Like, and you can look at it and appreciate it from an aesthetic or an artwork stance just fine. And that comic book's 40 years old now.
Exactly.
But it holds up just in the same way that I think cell shading and like 8-bit, 16-bit kind of sprites hold up.
Exactly.
Just perpetually. And it's more difficult to find, they may be great RPGs or just great games in general. From like early 3D days, and they just don't hold up as well.
They don't.
Like, mechanically, they might make it, or vice versa. Maybe the mechanics suck, but it looks great because it's that kind of cell shading.
Yeah.
It's just it doesn't always like coalesce into a complete package. I think the ones that are going to do the best are going to be like cell shaded, sprite based RPGs.
Exactly.
Like, it's just easier to translate.
Which is it's funny to see. So obviously full circle here, but
yeah, and I mean, you can also see in the gaming community, especially like the indie community, like these kind of smaller games, or they look smaller, come back.
Exactly.
You get like Pure Soldier and the Great Architects or something, which I really enjoyed, and it's like they did Sega Genesis cartridges, but it came out in like the late aughts or something like that, 2010, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like. Obviously, there's still a player base there, people who still like kind of love that genre and that look of things, after all this time, regardless of like consoles flopping or consoles making it or
controllers making it, controllers flopping it.
Yeah, it's like even with all this stuff, whether it's a hit or a miss from like a hardware company, these games, depending on how they're styled, will make it.
Exactly,
and others will be forgotten, unfortunately.
And if styles are done right, they'll last. You always are going to know them.
Yeah. I think, like, Zelda Wind Waker, we didn't really touch on at the beginning of the podcast. Another cell-shaded one that I think holds up.
Yeah, exactly.
I have gone and played, like, Majora's Mask.
If it holds up, I love Majora's Mask. If it holds up, it's always brought back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think people were, like, clamoring for, like, a new Borderlands, which we finally got last year.
That's what I mean. They were bitching about it, but they loved it so much because it brought back
They were bitching about it before the first one came out. As soon as it launched, people liked it. They knew what it was. But even though they've done, like the Handsome Jack collection, and they, kind of did like a refresher. And this is more mechanics-wise than how it looks. For like the original Borderlands, and people played crap out of them. They streamed them, they played them, they were playing them with friends, they were playing with viewers, whatever it was. Yeah, Telltale's coming back very quickly.
Exactly.
So it's like obviously people want those kind of games and how they look. I think with Telltale they got in over their heads a little bit, and they just didn't have a good engine to base stuff on. So it was like gameplay stuttering and stuff, and frame rate drops.
But if you think about it, though,
which will ruin a story.
They remembered them, so they brought them back.
They did, yeah. And there's some heavy hitters in there, like you brought up. You talked about like The Walking Dead. And,
exactly.
We talked about the new patch to Batman, and you could even throw in Tales
Jurassic
from the
Park,
Borderlands, and those weren't cel shaded actually. The old Telltale games weren't.
Oh, okay. We won't talk about those. Just forget.
Yeah. Wolf Among Us.
Yep, Wolf Among Us. There you go.
Good one. Tales from the Borderlands was really good. But yeah, they had some heavy hitters in there, and I think people just didn't want it to go away. Yep. So even though the company was probably mismanaged and they didn't listen enough to players, they might have even had people there actually like asking for it too. To get a better engine to make it mechanically better so that it could last longer, run on a better engine. But art style wise, I think it'll hold up.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Right.
And I hope that they just do that. It's like with this new company, or even much
Hopefully,
further down the
fingers crossed,
line,
yeah.
that they figure out how to kind of fix that aspect of it, or they remaster them. And I think those remastered versions will be the ones that'll hold the test of time.
Exactly.
We'll just port those over and over and over again.
Oh,
like, they function now, they run smoothly, you're not going to have a frame rate drop, and then the art style is going to hold up. So
exactly.
you can play it, 20 years from now, the PS8 or whatever, PS7, it's like...
PS25,
Yeah, people won't complain about it, but I think you could probably get another, like, walking simulator that is more like 3D, and I don't think it'll hold up. Yeah, I think people might remember it fondly, but I don't think you'll be able to play it as easily.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think that's kind of a wrap.
Yeah.
Kind of did like a
big full circle.
Yeah.
We 360'd it.
Oh! And we talked about the 360. I never thought I would. This is just like off the cuff, but would take part in a podcast or discuss like the Atari Jaguar with Turbo Graphics. Like,
fun memories.
Such a weird console. There's some weirdos out there.
Housekeeping.
Yeah, so we'll wrap up with some housekeeping. If you've stuck with us on our ramblings. Last episode I brought up that we're available on a multitude of platforms. So hopefully you've tried to take advantage of that. If you missed out for whatever reason on that little spiel, we are now available on iTunes, YouTube. Castbox is our hosting website, so you can still get us there. As well as Google Play Music and Spotify.
Yeah, we're expanding, folks.
Yeah, we kind of got the big five under control. So,
yep. Oh, we're expanding, obviously. Our tiny little paws are getting in the little crevices.
We're trying to, yeah. And also, like I brought up last episode, my next big goal for the podcast is like podcast directories and then other podcast hosting services. So if you use something very specific, podcasting wise, we want to be available to you on there as well. So you don't have to change anything up or try to find us in a more obtuse kind of way. So, and then the long term goal is that Rage Quit will be on Patreon.
Yep, hopefully soon.
It'll be free to listen to still, but if you want to listen to it early, the plan is you can listen to it, like a week early or something.
We'll be Patreon.
Yeah, or a few days early or something along those lines. And I found out, too, there's actually a podcast that I listen to via Patreon, and it works great as a podcasting app. I didn't realize. I play it through there.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
so you can have the Patreon app, and then you can check through, like, all the people that you subscribe to or pay money to and stuff, and then you can see their, like, announcements. And then if they are, like, a podcasting one, like the one I listen to, you can post a link there. Okay. And then listen to it. So if you're big into Patreon, like look forward to that in the future.
Yeah, we'll be expanding on the horizons.
Yeah, and podcasting is going to be a main focus.
All right. Well, as always, I'm Ariel Schultz.
And I'm Anthony Schultz.
Follow that bear.
Peace, homies. Hey there, guys. This is Anthony Schultz, one half of the duo for Rage Quit. I just wanted to spend a minute or two, at most, talking about Ariel and I's other endeavors or where you can follow her and I if you're a fan of this podcast. So, I'm most prolific on Twitter as far as social media is concerned. I share more kind of gut reaction or like private experiences and opinions there. I'm at Anthony R. Schultz. Pretty easy to remember, just my name. And if you'd be so inclined, you can give me a follow, and I also drop Rage Quit links there every week, and other things that Ariel and I are both working on. ASInquisitor also streams, which is the production company that produces Rage Quit, essentially myself at the moment. And I stream 5 days a week. I'm a variety streamer, so I do a little bit of everything. Hopefully, there's something there that you would really enjoy, even if it's just 1 day a week. I take every Thursday and Friday off, and you can follow and or subscribe at twitch.tv/ASInquisitor. All these links that I'm mentioning will be in the description box below, and I will reiterate. Also, ASInquisitor has a YouTube channel. So if you're not listening to this podcast via YouTube, if you're using your preferred podcast provider, This podcast does make its way to YouTube. We will eventually be recording not only our voices, but also ourselves when we do the podcast. We're just working on some equipment issues right now. But we also have past streams that I've done for ASInquisitor that have a little bit more kind of polish or pizzazz to them. They're divided up into like better bite-sized chunks for complete game playthroughs or let's plays. There's also a lot of unique content there. I record things throughout the week as I play games, just kind of funny moments or maybe even like personal achievements, things of that nature. And so you can search for ASInquisitor on YouTube. And again, the link will be in the description below. But those are my 3 kind of primary platforms that you can find me on. So that's Twitter, YouTube, and Twitch. Ariel actually has her own YouTube channel called Painting with LM Schultz. She's a very talented painter. She has her fine arts degree and enjoys painting for cathartic reasons as well as to improve on her like technical prowess. So she started her own YouTube channel to improve on her techniques as well as show people kind of some basics or things that you can do painting wise. There's also some other kind of crafty do-it-yourself kind of ideas and videos on there as well that pertain a little bit more personally to her and I because they usually involve our family. You know, it's a family project that she's working on. For example, she did our son's Halloween costume, and so she walked through how she constructed and created, the costume and how you could do something similar for your kiddos at home. And then finally, you can follow Ariel on Twitter as well. She is primarily on Twitter, just like myself. We don't really indulge in too many other social media platforms, save for maybe Instagram. I don't think we're as active on there. Ariel might be, more so than myself. But you can follow her at Merhobbit and give her a follow as well. That's my lovely co-host and beautiful wife, Ariel. But anyways, I just wanted to stop in and kind of throw some links your way. And if you were curious about what ASInquisitor was doing and how Rage Quit kind of fit into that ecosystem, there it is. Yeah, got all the links for you. If you're interested in any one of those, all of those links are going to be in the description box below, and they're going to be in every podcast episode now. So I'm not sure if they're entirely there right now, but I'm going to be doing a fresh write-up and make sure and have all of those included for you. So just click a link or copy and paste and head on over if any of those strike your fancy. But anyways, thanks for enjoying the show. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next week for more rage quittiness. And as always, follow the bear. And have a good evening, guys.